You're probably sitting at your desk wondering if you should throw another few $1,000s at a laptop that looks like a mini desktop, or just keep using the old machine that's starting to lag every time you open a big Photoshop file. It's a real worry because a mobile workstation is a big investment, and the last thing you want is to end up with a powerful-looking box that never really fits the way you work. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you start looking at mobile workstations, the first thing that comes to mind is, can it actually keep up with my day-to-day load without turning into a brick? Most people in this space are juggling heavy 3D models, video timelines that stretch past an hour, or AI-driven data pipelines that demand both CPU and GPU muscle. At the same time, they still need to hop onto a coffee shop table or a client's office and have the machine stay light enough to carry. The Lenovo ThinkPad P16v Gen 3 tries to walk that line by packing a Core Ultra 7265H, an integrated neural processing unit, 32GB of RAM, and an RTX PRO 1000 with 8GB of dedicated VRAM into a 16-inch chassis. The Core Ultra 7 isn't just a marketing badge, it's built on a hybrid architecture that blends performance cores with efficiency cores, which means you get a noticeable boost when you fire up a resource-heavy IDE or run a batch of TensorFlow scripts. The built-in NPU adds another layer of speed for AI-related tasks, so if you're doing anything from image upscaling to running inference on a local model, you'll see the workload shift off the CPU and finish faster than on a traditional laptop without that extra chip. It's not a lab-tested metric, but the real-world feedback from people who run Lightroom plugins or run AutoML pipelines suggests the experience feels smoother, especially when you have multiple tabs or containers open. Memory is another pain point for power users, and 32GB of DDR5 gives you a comfortable headroom for multitasking. In practice, I've watched engineers spin up a full Visual Studio solution, a Docker container stack, and a couple of browser-based dashboards all at once without the system begging for more swap. The 1TB SSD, while not the fastest PCIe 4.0 drive on the market, still offers quick boot times and enough space for large project files, raw footage, or a decent library of CAD components. It's also a nice safety net because you won't be scrambling for external storage every few weeks. Graphics are where the P16v starts to separate itself from the average business laptop. The RTX PRO 1000 isn't a GeForce-class card meant for hypes gaming, but it's built for professional workloads. When you fire up Blender or run a real-time ray tracing preview in Unreal Engine, the extra 8GB of VRAM lets you push higher texture resolutions without the dreaded out-of-memory pop-ups. For engineers who rely on SolidWorks or Autodesk Inventor, the workstation-grade drivers mean fewer glitches when you rotate a complex assembly. It's not a card you'd bring to an esports tournament, but for design and simulation it delivers the kind of stable performance you need day after day. The 16-inch display is set at 1920x1200, which gives you a little extra vertical real estate compared to a strict 1080p panel. Watching movies on it feels crisp, and the extra line count helps when you have long timelines or code editors open side by side. The color reproduction is decent for general media consumption, but you'll notice it's not quite the DCI-P3 coverage you'd expect from a dedicated creator's monitor. If you're a photographer who needs factory-calibrated accuracy, you'll probably want an external color-critical screen for final tweaks. The 60Hz refresh rate is also a trade-off. It's fine for most productivity work, but anyone hoping to get a buttery smooth gaming experience will feel the difference. One of the less obvious strengths is the classic ThinkPad keyboard layout. The English language key spacing and the tactile feedback make long coding sessions less tiring, and the presence of the track point gives you that extra level of precision when you're navigating 3D viewports. The chassis is a typical ThinkPad matte black finish, which doesn't scream high-end workstation but does hide fingerprints and wear. It's a bit heavier than a typical Ultrabook, around 5.5 pounds, but you're still able to slide it into a standard backpack without needing a dedicated rolling case. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The battery life on a machine that houses a 265H processor, a discrete GPU, and a 1TB SSD won't stretch to an 8-hour workday unless you're mostly in idle mode. In my testing, a mixed workload of video rendering and CAD work gave me roughly 4 to 5 hours before the charger became a necessity. The cooling system does its job, but under sustained load you'll hear the fans ramp up and the chassis can get warm to the touch. That's not a failure, just a reminder that you're pushing a lot of silicon through a relatively compact space. Finally, the port.